John, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, no, happy to be here. Thanks for having me in.
Appreciate it. When you walked in, we were talking about how to improve sales through operations in business. I guess that's what you focus on.
It's a lot of what I
Yeah.
do. I mean, I think at the end of the day, there's different parts to operation. I mean, people typically think about, costs, cutting costs, like, oh, I got to do things cheaper, be able to sell cheaper or whatever. But yeah, a lot more of the focus that I try to bring these days is on how do you use your operations to create a better experience to drive more sales, right? I don't think that you have ever heard of someone that had a bad experience, but then was happy to pay a premium price for it.
What are some of the companies that do it well?
I think, wow. I mean, that's like really hard to call out, like a lot of the companies that, do things well. I think, like, look, you want to take something super simple. I think Amazon does pretty well in certain ways of using their operational execution to drive more sales, right? Like when you think about Prime, when you think about like the speed of their delivery, when you think about the types of features they do. So here in the city, for example, now I've started to notice that Amazon is offering to deliver overnight, meaning you could get your product from 4 a.m. to 8 a.m.
I got a package this morning when I walked out.
Yeah.
So the office.
Well, there you go, right? So that's one way that you can use a type of execution to create a different opportunity and a different experience that then drives sales, right? That particular offer, and a lot of people get confused about why Amazon's so fast, but that particular offer is because they want you to use Amazon as opposed to running to the local store.
Yes.
Right. So that one's going to be heavily on commodities and sort of your basic needs and all of that kind of stuff, because they want you to have that option.
Yeah.
But by putting that out there and doing, something that's honestly pretty expensive, because even a 4 to 8 window is not ideal for them. It creates an opportunity for you.
Yes.
And it creates a sales opportunity that, if they didn't do it, you may not have bought on Amazon, right? You may have gone to the local store.
Oh, yes.
So it's not a guarantee all the time, obviously, for your sale. But, if you don't have the offer, then you certainly won't get a sale.
Yeah, I find that it's low-hanging fruit these days. Ever since we got back out of the lockdowns and stuff like that, I've seen like services for fast food restaurants, salespeople at Toys R Us, or just people that help you out, or Best Buy, stuff like that. Like it's gone way down, and I think that it's low hanging fruit for most companies out there these days.
Oh, for sure. So here's one that's like near and dear to my heart that I've been trying to rattle the cage on. We live in an area where obviously there's like some spas and there's some wellness things, like some pretty well known ones and
The
things
Nordique?
like that. I'm not going to name names, but I'm just saying, like, we're in that area. And even for as beautiful as a lot of these places are, and as well as they execute in certain things, even they have huge opportunities.
Of course.
Because, like, for example, you should know these days, because there's no reason to not know. You should know if that person that booked is a first-time client.
Okay.
You should know if they're a VIP client. You should know if it seems like they're only coming on their anniversary or their birthday,
Yes.
for example. And when that person walks in the door, you need to take advantage of those opportunities, right? Like that's part of your execution if you really want to drive sales, because what does everyone want more than everything else these days, right? They want to have a good experience. They want to feel that they got good value. But super important is that everybody wants to have a story. Everybody wants to be able to go tell their friends something. Everyone wants to be able to share, like, whatever happened to them, and they want to be able to bring that to their friends, to their community or whatever. And that's where so many businesses just don't do it. Spas and stuff, I think you want to talk about low hanging fruit. Like this would just dominate, because you could go in, oh my God, it was crazy. I booked my first time, and they knew it was there, and because it was my first time, they did something like a little bit different or whatever.
Yeah.
That person is going to tell everyone they can.
Yes.
Right? And that reputation and that experience of them treating their customers in a way that's a little bit different than just kind of like a transaction or providing great service for what they're paying for will 100% just increase their sales.
Yes.
Right? Restaurants are another great example. Restaurants these days, the prices have gone up. The tip expectations have gone up. And I would say that generally across the board, quality of service has become more transactional than experiential.
Oh, yes.
And again, if you want to run a more successful restaurant, which is one of the hardest industries to be in, you will make more money. You will have more repeat customers. You will have higher average tickets if the people sitting at the tables are happy, and you're got a better opportunity to get that done if you don't rely just on the quality of the food and the kitchen, because that person serving and interacting is really that ambassador for the experience between everything that's, the kitchen, between the front, between whatever atmosphere is going on at the restaurant.
Oh, yeah. We just had an experience at Giovanni's on Preston, and the host at the front door, like he came to our table like mid dinner.
Yeah.
And, he knew that it was my birthday.
Yeah.
I talked about that, talked about our kids, he's got kids. And like we walked away. Of course, the meal was amazing.
Yeah.
But like that's what we remember, right? Is that 5-minute conversation, like mid dinner.
So watch what's going to happen here for anyone. So
Yeah.
I went to Giovanni's too earlier in the year,
Yeah.
Valentine's Day thing. Same thing.
Wow.
Killer experience. The server was like incredible.
Yeah.
Just like honestly, the fact that you go in knowing you're going to pay a lot at that restaurant.
Oh, yeah.
But honestly, you come out feeling great because of the fact that, to your point, the food was great, the service was great, the detail was great. And now here you and I are talking, and it's like the second you told me that story, I'm like, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And if we had someone else there who hadn't been to Giovanni's yet,
Yeah.
how long do you think it's going to take them before they're like, "Ooh, I got my next special thing."
Yeah. Next birthday party or
Whatever.
Next
Yeah.
special event, they're there.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's something that we don't think about much these days because, in sales, we're like, oh, okay, what type of CRM can I get? Or what type of lead magnet can I get? But you're absolutely right. Like creating raving fans is like the best and easiest and the cheapest way to attract more clients.
Mm-hmm.
And it's more rewarding as a business owner, and I'm going to toot my own horn here. Like I had a lady selling her house and, she wasn't able to cut the grass before photos. So I just say, I've got a few hours, went over there with my lawnmower and, it turned into a Google review. It turned into, more clients that way.
Exactly.
So, it's going that little extra mile doesn't cost you much, but it makes a huge difference. And I know I can't do that for every client, but whenever you see an opportunity, just go for it.
Well, and that's the thing though, is that I actually think, funny enough, in a lot of circumstances, the randomness or the infrequency of it gets it even more interesting, right? Because then people want to hear it, right? Because look, humans, we're kind of bad. Like we get used to stuff really quickly, right? Like, you know what I mean? Someone becomes a millionaire and then they have $5 million, $10 million or whatever. And then those things that brought them a lot of joy and sort of a lot of excitement and a lot of surprise.
Yeah.
When they maybe first cross that threshold, fall off and they fall off very quickly, right? Like how often do you see even, young kids these days, like we were talking about YouTube earlier in the shorts and stuff like that, about, people scrolling through, like we're training ourselves to be like instantaneously rewarded. And if we, we get very used to that level of stimulus.
Yes.
So it doesn't have the same impact as when we first pick it up. Like, I mean, for most people, when they first picked up something like a TikTok feed, they're like, oh my God, this is so funny. They had a real enjoyment from the first few experiences. Now that's like doom scrolling. There's a reason why people call it that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I deleted all apps off my phone for that reason, because it was just so like soul sucking.
Exactly.
Just on there for hours and hours and hours. So I guess if you're going to have some type of random reward, some random service, I guess that the employees that you hire make a huge difference.
For sure, the employees make a huge difference. But I always caution people to be careful about performance based on people. And I know that sounds really bad because it really is about people. But what I mean by that is more, don't succeed just because Dave works here.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? It's like the things that Dave is doing or whatever, can you turn them into a process? Can you turn them into part of your culture? Can you turn them into part of your daily operating sort of system, at your store, restaurant, business, whatever? So that, Dave might still be really great and you may not, Dave will make a difference, but it shouldn't be Dave makes all the difference and Steve can't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you have things like that, like that's a business problem in my opinion, right?
Yes.
It's not enough knowledge sharing. It's not enough kind of consistency. It's not enough of giving people the tools and the information and the things that they need to have those levels of success.
So as a business, how could you encourage your employees to go and do something special?
Well, I think at the end of the day, the first thing that you said is your culture and your expectation, right? And I think it's important that people understand why. A lot of things, in business and in life in general will fail because of the fact that someone is told something to do,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not really explained the why and they're not really shared the importance of it.
Yeah.
I think if you ran a spa and you explained to your employees that it's important for you that, you create these moments that you every once in a while brighten someone's day, or that you want to brighten at least one or two people's day every day.
Yeah.
Like, these simple messages and ways that you can anchor to it, I think help people understand. And look, I might be a little bit naive, but ever since I've been younger and stuff like that, I've always held that nobody really wants to be working in an environment where they wake up in the morning and they're just like, oh, I can't wait to have a bad day at work today.
No.
Like nobody really wants that. Of course, people end up having bad days and they're in situations they don't like, but
It happens.
I don't think anyone really wants it. So if you provide the opportunity for people to succeed and to thrive and to enjoy what they're doing, I think more often than not, you're going to find that you will get that sort of collaboration and cooperation and buy-in.
Yeah. So maybe a debrief at the end of their shift and just say, hey, how did you change a client's expectation, or how did you wow a client today? I think that might help.
For sure. It definitely can help so that other people can feel the experience, but also making sure that you acknowledge and wow your staff.
Yes.
They're a type of client too when you're in the business, right? And, encouraging that employee that is trying but struggling matters.
Yes.
Calling out the fact that someone did something really great, asking someone, to share their experience with it or why they chose to do that, and to highlight those things that, the customer might bring in and say about that person or whatever. All of these types of things matter.
Of course. Let's dive into a few case studies of people that you worked with recently. Are you allowed to talk about them?
I could talk about situations,
for
maybe,
sure.
but not names. Yeah.
Because since this is what you do, you coach companies to improve sales through operations. What are some of the cool stuff that some of your clients have done?
Well, I think so. The first thing that a lot of people really need to appreciate is the fact that, like, you have to set yourself up to have information.
Yeah.
And to be able to understand what's going on. A lot of people will think that it's like a chicken and the egg. Like, if I don't have it, I can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is that in any situation that you're in, you can get what you need to start driving, improvements and stuff like that. And very often it comes from simple things. So, you can, I had one client that improved their experience dramatically just because of the fact that they started asking questions,
Mm-hmm.
that they weren't asking before, and collecting that kind of like information.
Okay.
Right. And once you have the visibility or you have some sense, it doesn't mean that you have to get it all the time. And it doesn't mean you have to get feedback perfectly from everybody, but your goal is to get a sense of what's going on, right? Like, why are people feeling that, this is a little bit lackluster? Why isn't this, kind of really resonating? Like, why aren't they buying the more expensive thing? When you start asking for that feedback, that's huge. A lot of other things I do can be done more in the background. So there's often things that come up that you can start to do where, if you have a loyalty program, and this is one that I think is a huge opportunity, is trying to make sure that you're advocating the loyalty policy, right? So if you're obviously this is usually something you see more in the retail environment, but when you get people to sign up, it's important to also respect the fact that, like, what you're doing with it. So some of the changes that you can implement and that I've had success implementing with clients is don't treat your email list, don't treat your loyalty list, don't treat your customers just as a an easy sales button. How many times do you get emails because of the fact that you signed up for something or whatever, and then you get inundated by it?
I ignore them,
You start really ignoring them. So, by creating specific types of ways that you can communicate in specific types of lists, you have to be really mindful about when you reach out and you're asking someone for attention, like respect the fact that you're asking for their attention, right? If you're walking around, just on the street or something like that, and someone always wants your attention, and it's just always be nonsense.
Yeah.
You're not going to want to give it all the time, and you're going to get more frustrated than not, like when it's asked. So make changes to how you send out your email communication has resulted in a lot of improvements when it comes then to actually making really customized offers, really intentional offers. You know what I mean? Like very thoughtful.
Yeah.
SMS messaging is one that I focus on, and I try to get people to understand that
Yes.
that one is even the next level. People will accept a certain type of communication at email level, but then their expectations dramatically shift at SMS or direct messaging, whether it's on WhatsApp or anything like that. And that's because it feels more personal.
Yes.
So you know what I mean? So it's like, no, you have to take your marketing program, like taking apart this marketing program that is basically just using it as a cold outreach list and sending out, kind of offer after offer after offer, redefining the list, redefining when people can use it or not, and then making sure that when you specifically send something out, you really know why. So that usually ends up having to need a lot of segmentation and like sub-segmentation, because if you have 10,000 members on your list, that's a lot of subgroups that are in that list. So you got to really do the work. And then once you've done the work and you have that as like an asset, you then have to be very mindful about how you're using it and when you're using it. So those are types of things where you can have a lot of success by relatively simple things that don't require a lot of tech, that don't require a huge investment or whatever, time and understanding of what you want to do. But those will have huge impact on your sales, because of the fact that when you ask for someone's attention, because it's less frequent, you'll more often than not get it.
Yes.
And then because you get more attention, you get higher conversion.
I know of a few influencers like Gary V does text marketing. It's not saturated yet. I imagine at some point it might be. Do you think that this new technology, like the automation, the AI, do you think it's going to put back into people will value more the face-to-face? Because you're an online guy, right?
Yeah, I do a lot of my stuff online. I do a lot of content and stuff too, yeah.
And how are some of these companies going around like this attention deficit that people have? Text message is one of them. You mentioned the overnight delivery also. But an e-commerce company, other than text, what other way could they stand out?
Well, I think that's why you're seeing so much like organic content. You're seeing a lot more of like behind the scenes, join me here, walk with me to the meeting. Like you're seeing a lot of this stuff because people, when they're scrolling their feeds, are becoming more and more interested in the people themselves and what's happening in the events, or what's the real life aspect of it, we'll say, rather than just like a polished ad.
I saw one of your posts this morning.
Did you? Which one was it?
About a toys company.
Oh, about Mastermind. Yeah, from the other day. Yeah. The guy crushed it. He was so good.
Yeah. So just wrapping gifts in a different way.
Well, so here's a good experience about like Mastermind, if you want to talk about it. So, look, working in a toy store, I'm sure can sometimes be challenging.
Yes.
Lots of kids, lots of activity, whatever. I'm sure it's challenging. So I have nothing against that. I have kids. I know that. Yeah. I admit it first. So how did this employee kind of like just take his everyday stuff and whatever? First, it was just being open to the conversation, right? And the way that he was responding and stuff like that, you could tell that he wasn't, even if he was irritated, which I admit he could be, but he wasn't coming across that way, and he was rapping. And then also what was interesting is that the second that, I showed genuine curiosity in what he was doing, and he could tell that I wasn't just making a comment, he was happy to share back with a lot more sort of genuine feedback and really talking about, how to do these things and what he's doing. And, when I said something like, for example, like, oh, I never even thought about that. I always have this problem, and I end up making like presents look like a mess. I never
Yeah.
even thought about what you just did there. And he goes, oh yeah. He goes, there's so much with rapping, and he's got into a story about all of the, the new kids and
Yeah.
the younger people that come on and talking about how they get so afraid by it, but then it becomes a competition because they all start to learn and try to develop and share these different things. But that whole experience between him sharing his feedback, between him legitimately doing things in a way that I thought was interesting and new and novel, and just having the patience to have that conversation. Maybe our interaction lasted, I don't know, let's say 4 or 5 minutes longer than it
Yeah.
should have or could have,
Yeah.
and that might have a bit of a play. But I walked out of there just like blown away. Like, you know what I mean? I had my youngest daughter with me, and I was telling her, I was like, this is really interesting. You should be watching that. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that whole experience now makes it so that the next time you're going to go get something, you're like, well, I'll go back there. Why not? That was so good last time,
Yeah.
you know? And it cost them nothing extra. It was everything that I paid for, right? Gift and whatever they do, the wrapping anyway. It's not like it was a charge or
Yeah.
whatever. But it goes in. But with that premium experience, could they potentially start to find a way to charge $1 for wrapping?
Yes.
And if I had a lot of positive experiences with it, I don't care.
No, for sure. And just the fact that you went online, you talked about it, and I saw the video,
Yeah.
I'm thinking, okay, on my way home, I'm going to stop by, buy a cool toy for my son,
Yeah. There's
and
all kinds of little things to get people thinking.
and that client acquisition cost is like, it boils down to almost zero,
Mhm.
because you're creating that raving fan. They're talking about the experience, and then people can, talk about it and influence other people to go.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. And that's why, to come back to your question about like, AI and all of these systems, the challenge you're going to have is that I think that people are going to be inundated with so much content. You're going to have to find a real way to connect more deeply with your customers and to find more ways to do that, which is why I think a lot of people are posting the more personal, type content
yes,
rather than just the ads. But like that social selling, social communities, and that's why I'm saying to be very respectful of, that mind share and of that attention, because when you get it, you can't abuse it.
hmm,
You know what I mean? Like the ad industry and the way that people typically ran businesses was kind of like, I've bought your attention, so you're going to have to give it to me, right? So what do? They slam us with commercials on TV, for example. You go to the movies, it's like 20 minutes of ads before or whatever. But people are so tuned out by that. So there's a real different perspective that a business should take if, when they're actually getting someone to choose to watch,
yeah,
and the real value that comes from someone choosing to watch
yes,
as opposed to being forced to watch.
yeah,
Very big difference in
of
terms
course,
of their experience and then how much they register about your brand and what you're doing.
yeah. And let's talk about who you would want to work with. Like, is there any specific type of industry, any sector that you would like to work with in the future?
Well, I do most of my work with, like, I say anyone that has any kind of operation. So if you take something and you're like executing it and you're getting it done, uh, that's where I do a lot of work. In terms of where I would love to see myself do more work, it really is probably more in that service-based business industry,
Okay.
right? So think of like your yoga studios, your spas, and stuff like that. Only because of the fact that most of the experiences that I've had and what I've heard people have, it's just it's so ultra basic outside of like the environment that it feels like it's like taking candy from a baby,
Hmm.
like in terms of generating more sales. Um, just because of the fact that, people are so busy, they've put so much effort into maybe like their venue or their, their establishment or whatever. It's kind of like this sense of like, if someone's selling like you can sell a t-shirt,
Yeah.
but if you're selling a black t-shirt, and all you do is try to sell on the black t-shirt, that's where all the traditional sales stuff around like, features, benefits, blah blah blah, the fabric, the size, the fit, quick drawing, whatever. Like you're just trying to sell on the product and you kind of forget everything else. So when you're trying to sell on the product and everyone else is trying to sell on the product, it's like you may not have that much differentiation.
Okay.
But if you can sell on more than just the product, so it's product and experience, or the product and the how, now all of a sudden you have a lot more opportunity to do things differently. So service-based businesses for sure have even more of a wide array that they can do than a product-based business. But even a product-based business, has a lot of opportunities. Like I was speaking to someone yesterday, and we were talking about beverages, and this particular type of beverage. Most people think about it's a hot beverage,
Okay.
but the data really says that from like an ingredient perspective, actually, like almost 2/3 of people end up experiencing this product cold, which is kind of interesting. But I would say that most people at home, or most people that think about buy it, think hot. So I was like, okay, so we need to start talking about and educating and showing more examples
What's this product?
of daily cold.
Yeah.
So it's a tea-based product.
Okay.
So and it's a matcha-based product. So
Okay.
a lot of people think about, matcha tea, for example.
Yes.
Obviously tea, it's hot, it's whatever. Except matcha itself, especially the way that it's kind of integrated in, is being used more and more as a component and added into different type of drinks. So more people are experiencing it cold.
Okay.
But people at home don't always think about it as having it cold or whatever. So it's like, how do you show more experiences of it cold? How do you show more quick things about what those people can do at home with it cold? What can they add? How can they add it to other beverages they might be interested in having that way?
Like a smoothie?
Whether, like a smoothie, some kind of like mixed drink, like maybe do you want to have it in a mocktail type thing?
Yeah.
Like, there's like a lot of different ways that you can start to do it.
It's an opportunity for them. Yeah. For
It's just because, like so many people, it was like my experience with the wrapping. It wasn't that like necessarily I didn't see someone rapping in a way that was like, oh my God, that like
blew my
I
mind.
couldn't do it. It was like, I just never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
And I have one of the funniest stories that I like to share about that is that I used to travel a lot back in the day, like a lot, like, hundreds of flights a year. And for the longest time, one of my biggest frustrations was when I would get back from the airport, I would always I'd have all kinds of bills and receipts from like the travel, expense accounts and whatever. And I'm like, I can't find the airport ticket to get out, right?
Okay.
That you have to scan. And this was like just maddening to me. And one day I just realized, I'm like, why am I putting this ticket with all of the other receipts?
Yeah.
Like, I'm just going to put it in a credit card slot.
Yeah.
And then I get back and I left the airport right away. And that seems so stupid, but it just highlights the fact that we fall into our patterns of thinking very quickly. And it's like, oh, it's a receipt. I have all my receipts. They all go together.
Yeah.
But that process, even though it made sense, sucked for every time I wanted to leave the airport. So more people would improve their business and improve their sales if they can get to a point where within their business, from their personal interactions, whatever, they can step away from how they always think and just open and be very open to doing things differently. And that's where a lot of the opportunities come for driving your sales through how you do it.
Where did you put your receipt?
I put in the credit card slot.
Yeah. Did you change that?
I did, yeah.
Yeah.
And I did for years after that. And it's just so silly. And the funny thing is, when I tell most people about that, they're like, "Oh, I kind of do that too.
Yeah,
I
me
kind of
too.
have all my receipts together."
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, granted, these days they let you tap with the card and like the cards your access and stuff like that. But it's just small things that very often don't take a lot of lift, or they don't take a lot of investment. It's just a change. Because like I said, most people have no idea how often they're kind of on like an autopilot thinking.
Most of the time.
Yeah. And if you ever want to know if you have an opportunity in your business to make more profit or just drive your revenue from how you're doing things, go to any one of your employees and just ask them why they're doing it that way. And if their first answer is that's because how I was trained or how we've always done it, guarantee you can make more money.
Yeah, you can step back and analyze that process. And
Yeah,
I guess it's in the
exactly.
small things that they do.
Mm-hmm.
The day-to-day
100%.
stuff, and then you could analyze that. And how do you work with companies? Do you coach them? Do you sell them consultation package? How does that work
So,
most of the time?
for the most part, I mean, I have 3 different types of service that I do. So I do kind of fractional project based and then like advisory. So advisory is very often for, sort of either smaller companies or someone that is thinking about something differently and they just want to get different feedback. The majority of the work I do is either fractional, which is like
Okay.
a kind of, I work with them on an ongoing basis in, let's call it like a part-time capacity. It's different levels of capacity or whatever, or project based. If someone really has a specific type of project, they're like, hey, we want to get this done. We want to implement this thing. So whether it's, going in and running that for them, or going in and just being like a stronger added resource for them, like so that they can get that project over the line. Both of those can happen, but those are pretty much how I usually engage. And then, depending on what people need, we kind of set things up to make sense for them, right? Like,
Yeah.
nobody needs 100 hours of service if like you can do it in 20.
Well, listen, it's so simple, and we rarely hear about it. Improving your sales through
Mhm.
operation. So just having this conversation with you for 25 minutes, like it's already getting my wheels spinning. So I can only imagine what somebody would get from hiring you on and just looking at the stuff a bit deeper. So thank you for the conversation. It's
Yeah, for
already
sure. It was great.
it's already getting me thinking about stuff. And just curious, how did you get into this line of thinking? Because it's not a service that I hear about often, right?
So yeah, I mean, I was fortunate in my career to always be in a role where I was given a lot of latitude
Yeah.
in terms of what I could do, with also a lot of expectations
Okay.
for cost savings and sort of making improvements. Working in sort of like logistics and supply chain kind of gets you to the point of understanding that like you can do anything, as long as someone's willing to pay for it. The hard part is trying to do the great things without the huge amounts of charges. You know what I mean? So when you start having to figure things out and well, how can I get this done in a better way, a faster way? How can I solve this problem? Whatever. You just get in. I don't know. I guess I just fell into a mode of thinking, differently about
Yeah.
about the problem. And then I also really kind of never let go of the fact that at the end of the day, no matter what anyone is doing, it's always about sales, and sales is always about the person. Because, you know, when I was younger and I used to work in like Future Shop before it
Yeah.
switched to Best Buy and stuff like that. Like, I mean,
I miss Future Shop.
yeah, it was cool. It was fun. I used to have a good
Service.
time with it. It
Service
was
was there.
service. And that was a good point, because people always be like, "Okay, you guys are on commission." It's like, you're just gonna take advantage of me. It's like,
No.
I started days at Future Shop, no word of a lie, probably no one that's ever worked there. I've started days where I walked in and literally I was at, minus $300
Why?
because someone returned something.
Oh, okay.
So it's like, if you made commission one day, you could start the next day and then you'd end up making like, maybe $8 an hour or whatever it was. So it's like there was zero benefit to ever pushing someone on a sale. And I used to say that all the time, be like, I have no benefit. To be honest with you, the guy who's on an hourly wage has more benefit to say whatever just to get you out the door than I do, because I don't want you returning it. I don't want to have that challenge. So you become very service oriented and understanding what it is. And it's that transfer of belief that if I'm going to get you to buy something, I have to get you to believe essentially what I want you to believe, or what's true to believe. And then, you have to feel good about it.
Of course.
So it's, you're going to improve your sales by making sure that you can connect with the people the right way, by making them feel good about it, by making them feel that they got the right value. Because if you push, or if you just grind it in, or if you just force it in with like even promo codes and whatever, sooner or later people are going to be like, I don't know if that was good enough, or I don't know
Yeah.
if I feel happy enough
It's
about that.
expected.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't want to talk bad about the current tech shops that are available, but I really miss those days when
Mm-hmm.
you go in and you'd get service, and it's being eaten up by all of this, Amazon and stuff like that. So I hope that service comes back, and I think that our conversation um, proves a point that it will come back in a huge way, because people are so hungry for it these
Oh,
days.
Yeah. And I think it's actually only gonna get more important because
Yes.
look, I don't like spending a lot of time on the AI stuff because, people just say whatever, but the reality is this. The more that these tools advance, the lazier a lot of people are going to be, which means that everything is going to become even more generic and more basic, which means service is going to become meh.
Yeah.
Like for example, the new Walmart in Mississauga,
Okay.
the Canadian one, you can walk in now. They don't even have product on the shelf. You go up to like a big screen, you buy your product, you select what you want, and then it just shoots out at a conveyor at the end, and you just kind of pick it up and
Ugh.
walk out. Now, in certain circumstances, like that's a type of service and a type of experience, and I
Yes.
think it has a place.
Yes.
But I think that would work as well for Aritzia? Absolutely not.
No.
You know what I mean? Like people don't want just the stuff when they walk into certain stores. So I think it's super important that you really understand your audience and you understand the difference between like what are my transactional buys and what are my transactional things versus what are my experiential things.
Yes.
And that is making a huge difference these days because the store can still have both, but the same way you go about delivering those to the customer or executing for the customer should be very different.
Yes. And I wonder if there's any data on like stores that have started to automate stuff. Like when you go to, and they do a great job, but the checkout
Mm,
at Shoppers, like it's tough to find somebody in there these days.
for sure.
So I myself, in my own experience, I've started going to the smaller ma and pa shops,
Mm,
the pharmacies in my local town, as opposed to stopping at the Shoppers Drug Mart on my way back to Wendover. I live in the country, so it's I'm only one anecdotal story, but I prefer the shops where there's actually people in there. So
yeah,
you know,
for sure. I mean, people want to ask. I think there's lots of opportunities these days if you know what you want to get
hmm
and just get it.
yes,
But I think that not every shopping experience can be that way.
true, yeah. You need to go the extra mile for your client.
Yeah.
Is there any good books on the subject that you would recommend somebody pick up to get an introduction?
Oh God. On
Customer appreciation, customer service.
well, I mean, there's like some like classic ones. Like, I mean, something that everyone should read would be like, the one about Disney.
Okay.
It's older and stuff like that. But if you haven't been to Disney, Disney is a good example that is still highly service oriented
I hear
and
that.
what they do. I mean, there's definitely stuff like that. Creativity Inc. is another interesting book if you want to start thinking about things
Yeah.
differently, and that's about Ed Catmull, who used to run Pixar.
Okay.
So that's kind of interesting if you want to get some thoughts about thinking about your process differently or how you go about your process, even though it's about movies and people are like, I don't do movies. It's kind of interesting, but like, the big takeaway from some of these things is understanding that like, depending on what you expect for the outcome,
Yeah.
if you want a lot of certainty in terms of what you're going to get out of doing something or making a change, you're likely going to get something that's very close to what you already have.
Okay.
So if you want to really do things differently and if you want to get different levels of performance, it's you have to actually really get away from understanding how much you think you can predict the future and start actually just kind of going and testing, which is why, a lot of the work that I do, I call it like it's a very iterative and like test and learn approach is because, like I know we want to go this way. This is how we start.
Yeah.
And then we're going to start and it's like, oh, is it working? Is it working? And then we keep refining and refining
Yes.
until you kind of get to where you want. Because if you say, I exactly just I'm here and I'm only going to accept this much of a difference, like you're not going to really be all that creative or innovative.
Yeah, because your focus is too narrow.
Yeah, you're
point.
wanting too much certainty out of the back end.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for the conversation.
Yeah, for sure.
I appreciate it. And the best way for people to reach out to you.
Could be my website. So it's operationalinnovations.ca. You can find me on LinkedIn. So it's like John McClymont, or it's John at operationalinnovations.ca. So super easy that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the bases covered.
Yeah.
Good. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks.